Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Off the Rails podcast. I am your host, Gregory, and with me, after a couple of long weeks, I have I have my fellow co-host with me. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Rem.
So, if you folks don't remember, this is Rem from I believe the official episode one of the uh, podcast. And today we have some interesting topics to discuss. Nothing planned, of course, but some ideas we discussed previously. Remy, you actually had something that you mentioned that you wanted to talk about. Would you like to?
Yes, it came to me in a dream. Specifically in the dream, I was arguing with you about the millionaire tax.
That okay? That's that definitely sounds like something that we can definitely talk about for hours and hours on end. Okay. Would you like to start off with anything?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, most of our listeners are going to be in Massachusetts anyway, but for those who don't know, the millionaire tax was a ballot initiative on the recent statewide elections, uh, introducing a new, how did they put it, a new tax bracket, I think, for those who make more than $1 million a year. They'll be taxed more, and that tax money, will be specifically, but not so specifically, used for transportation and education.
Okay. Uh, and we did just touch on that topic slightly.
We didn't want to get too deep in before we started recording.
Right. But you said there that you agreed with like taxing the more wealthy people.
So not necessarily. I said I think it's good intentions.
Hmm.
The idea of, these people obviously have more than enough money for themselves. Let's take a little bit more of it and use that for ostensibly good causes, education and transportation. Again, I said specifically, not so specifically, because one of my biggest problems with the ballot initiative, which did pass, by the way, is that there are a lot of ways to spend money on transportation and education. I mean, you could just give a couple $1 billion of subsidy to big car manufacturers, and that's technically spending money on transportation.
Right. Okay. So you think that the money may not go to the right places?
Yeah, I think I probably would have been more supportive of the ballot initiative if it were more specific about how that money gets spent, because I don't necessarily trust our government to spend money in the smartest ways.
Right. No. Okay. Of course. I don't think there's much argument from my side here. I agree that they should be more specific and people should know what they're voting for. Um, but then, of course, since it passed, there's not much that we can do now. But I definitely like I definitely think that if you're making like a lot of money, or like millions and millions, or like $1 billion or so, um, with the right laws, with the specific right laws, you should have to pay more tax than someone who makes like 20, 40 grand a year. You know what I mean?
So they already had to pay more total tax, but not necessarily a greater percentage. It would be the same percentage of their income, I believe.
Interesting. Okay. Um. Yeah, but I mean, like just in general, like obviously some of those people worked really hard to get where they are. Like I'm not saying like take most of their money away, but like of course like just or in any way shape or form they should. Well, they're able to give more to society, so why not? You
Yeah,
know?
well, again,
Yeah.
I agree with the general thinking behind it makes sense. Of course, again, like I was saying, if it's not specific. Like I don't necessarily trust uh millionaires to always spend their money in, the best ways that are going to help society, but
Right.
I'd have to say in general I trust our government even less to do that.
No, I think that is I think that is fair, and like I also agree that when they make laws about taxing the rich, they should be more specific, or they should make better guidelines to make sure that the money goes to the right places.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, I think we both, in terms of like a broad range, we agree on that, and we also agree on the matter of the fact that that um that the law should be more specific, about who's spending what,
Hmm.
and where the money is going to, because obviously if the law was more specific, if it was saying we would not give to, like, already rich people, we would give to like good solid infrastructure projects that are needed and things like that, you're saying that you would support it, or you would have.
Probably, yes. I probably would have supported the measure if it were very specific about what that money is going to be used for.
Right, and which I think, when when you're doing something that so many people out there disagree with, you should be specific so everyone knows, even if they don't agree with it, everyone knows what side they're on and why, and or like I was saying, like even if you don't like it, at least you know where the money's going. You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. More
Uh,
transparency in government.
right. Right. But speaking of just wealth and money in general, do you believe? And this is a pretty big argument out there. Do you think that many people out there, like the millionaires and billionaires, they are self-made?
I think there are many who are self-made, many who are not self-made. I mean, obviously there are millionaires and billionaires who they were born into wealth. They've never worked. I mean, certain people come to mind. They were born into wealth, never worked a day in their life. But others certainly did work hard. My father, for instance, is well, my parents are technically millionaires, but neither of them were born into wealth. And in fact, my dad actually he grew up relatively poor, like lower middle class. Uh, so again, the one of the problems with any kind of legislation with which targets millionaires or billionaires is it's obviously going to be hard to distinguish between those two categories.
Yeah, yeah, and some people, and that's actually not something I've really thought about much. Like the self-made millionaires compared to the ones that are not self-made. Like it's probably definitely not as fair as taxing the ones who are self-made, who worked hard to get there, compared to the ones who were born into wealth. But it's kind of one of those things where you kind of have to um, compromise. Like obviously you don't want to tax too much, like a lot of money, uh, like a huge percentage, because that's technically money that they earned, and you could potentially be hurting those who worked hard to earn that. You know.
Yeah, and
Um, but no, but yeah, because there's a lot of people out there, like who claim that they're self-made billionaires or millionaires or whatever. And I think that if you're born into a family that's already famous, and you make a product, and you either get their help, or you already you're born into popularity and publicity, right?
mhm.
So I guess I would have a question for you. Like, do you think that counts as a legit self-made
Oh,
millionaire?
for sure it's more subtle than, I can either fit into this category or this category. That's what makes it so hard. I mean, we're all born into different circumstances. We all
Of
have
course.
varying degrees of privilege, and there's no real way to quantify that. And that's of course the problem when it comes to making policy is there's never going to be a perfect way to split people up.
Oh yeah, absolutely not. But would you consider people who are, like, let's say, someone is born into a really wealthy, popular family, and they're trying to like sell a specific item, right? And oh, hold on. And so they make this item, and they end up getting a lot of money from this item, but it that money doesn't really come from them like trying to like hustle to get their get their product out there. It's more like they get a lot of help from being born into that
Oh yeah,
kind
for
of
sure.
area.
Anyone in that kind of situation who claims to be, a self-made millionaire, they're full of themselves.
So
I mean, the same person making the same thing who was, born in rural Alabama or what have you, they're they're not gonna be making millions.
right. No, yeah, okay. So you wouldn't, even though they came up with the idea of the product and made the product, because they have so much like support already in terms of fame that the product would probably just sell even if it was bad anyway. You would not consider them to be like legit billion or self-claim self-made billionaires or millionaires.
I mean, it's always gonna be complex to
Right.
even those who didn't necessarily start off rich or famous, who created uh some product that really took off. There's certainly an element of hard work. There's certainly an element of smarts, but there's
Right.
always going to be that element of being in the right place at the right time too.
Of course. Yeah. And some people that may not have born or may not have been born into that may get that. Because sometimes it's the aspect of luck and fate and what have you. But would you personally consider that person to be a legit self-made uh, millionaire or billionaire? Like,
You're saying the
would it,
person who was born into a famous family, and no, I already said no. That if they're claiming that, they're probably full of themselves.
okay. No, I would agree. I would definitely agree. Like, it's obviously not their fault that they're born into their family, or like it was not like they chose it. But in a technical level, I would not consider that um, a like a legit title, because of like if they have like millions of fans and the product is like $20 and half of those people buy it, that's you're already like a millionaire just right then and there.
Yeah,
Like, just make a decent product that is not like it doesn't have to be great. It can be just okay, and you can sell like millions of them.
yeah, for
You know,
sure.
no, but good. I don't think there's much of an argument when it comes to that between me and you, because I'm strong about I think it's similar to me, although we do have a bit more disagreement when it comes to this other topic, the pro-life pro-choice thing. Even though even though I'm on one side, like pro-choice, I have some specific things that I think that, for example, like if I were to make laws, I would make it so anyone could have an abortion anywhere. But if you had a certain amount of like too many abortions, like on a calendar year, you would get like penalties. And if you get too many penalties, you can face jail time. And the penalties would be like a certain like amount of money. First it would be decent, then it would start accumulating. And then if you had multiple times that you did so many abortions that you had multiple penalties throughout a course of like 2-3 years, then you would face like an even harsher penalty. So even though I am on one side, I still think there should be laws, because people will take advantage of, like, if you just say, "Oh, it's pro-choice," whenever, don't worry about it. That gives people the freedom to be lazy and to just not care and to do whatever they want. Like for me, like I'm pro-choice, but I've had a vasectomy done last week, and I'm still gonna be safe even after the two test results that I have to wait 3 months or so to get come back negative. Like, I'm still gonna be safe. I'm going to avoid getting to that situation, even though if I could choose, I would. If it were to happen, I would have an abortion in a specific situation. So just because I'm on one side, it does not mean that I am like 100% like um like just blindly gonna like I'm just gonna blindly follow that, you know, like we're saying, like with the politics, in terms of where the money is going. Like just because I think we should tax the rich, I wouldn't be too fond of a law that was super broad about where the money is going. You know?
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's why I'm also what I believe to be like a really good person for like an argument, because I see on both sides. Even though I have one side, I definitely don't 100% lean to just one side. You know.
Yeah, for sure. Anyone who has the same opinion as everyone else on an issue, and they're unwilling to see the other side, they're not really thinking about it.
Right. Right. And that makes you look even more foolish. You know, like if you lean so forward into one side that you're not willing to see the other, um, or at least like have your own opinions and just follow someone else's. I think no matter what side you're on, that's just like it's um it's foolish, it's childish, and it doesn't help anyone. You know.
Yeah,
But
yeah, that's why. I mean, look at the state of our country. If more people were willing to actually hear other points of view, our culture would not be so toxic.
no, I can also definitely agree on that. Like like the like the toxic masculinity and the modern feminism. You know, like they both have certain points that make sense, but if you just call yourself like a feminism, or if you just call yourself like a super like masculine person without knowing that there's at least certain points, or some points at least, on each side that just can derail the whole title, you know, you're just gonna be like, you might as well just not have a brain at that point. You know, like you're just following orders without understanding that like any and almost any or every side has its pluses and negatives, some more than others, but you at least have to be aware of the negatives of your side, so you can be better at debating and better at understanding the other side while not giving up on the side that you believe in.
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah. No, like I said, like we both agree a lot on taxing the rich, but something that we don't agree on, Remy, is the pro-life, pro-choice argument.
Oh, do you really want to switch to that
Yeah,
now?
dude, we're gonna switch on to those gears. The train's gonna go into some really thin rails. I'll say that. Um, but no, so yeah, so I obviously, as I stated, is pro-choice, which obviously means, in terms of the argument, and by the words I said earlier, that Remy is pro-life. Um, so here is just like a side note, right? So I'm pro-life. I'm not pro-life, but I'm pro-choice. But like I said, I did a vasectomy. I'm still gonna be safe even after the vasectomy. So it's not like I'm just gonna go willy nilly, have like unprotected sex or whatnot, not have not even try to avoid a situation where an abortion would be an option. And Remy, he's one of the pro. He's probably one of the only people that I know that is pro life that I can actually have an argument or a debate with, and not just lose my patience because of how dumb, for lack of like a better word, some people sound. Because Remy is vegan.
Indeed, yes.
Remy is vegan, and yeah, and that is definitely something that like a lot of pro life people, you know, they say like, oh, I'm pro life, but this may be looking really tasty. You know what I mean? And that's just like a big contradiction in my mind. Like obviously, like you're gonna harm a life no matter what. Like just by living, like your life without trying to harm anything, you may unintentionally harm something. So obviously, there's no perfection, but there's definitely levels that you can, like, sometimes you can control, but the things you can, you should. And by calling yourself pro-life, that doesn't mean that doesn't just mean human life. That means all life. Um, So when someone tells me that they're pro-life, but they don't even try to slow down on meat, or they don't even like buy like use almond milk instead of cow milk. It's a really hypocritical stance, I think. But Remy being vegan is better because it actually shows that not only does he not is he against abortions, but he also tries to he he does his part in terms of minimizing the pain and suffering to other species and other forms of life as well.
Yeah, and maximizing their potential for flourishing. So people are often surprised I'm when I tell them I'm pro-life, because there's the stereotype that pro-life is like religious Christian, like uh, fundamentalist zealotry. Uh,
Which, to be fair, some of them are, but I
yeah,
don't think
honestly, a lot.
everyone is.
Yeah, honestly, I think a lot. Obviously, not all, but I do think a lot of pro-life people do fall into that camp. And so Gregory mentioned he sees that as kind of hypocritical, and I actually agree with that. I think it it is somewhat hypocritical for someone to go and say I'm pro-life, I oppose abortion, but then they turn around and they eat meat, or they support the death penalty, or what have you. They use uh, insecticides in their house, or whatever.
It's like the term lukewarm Christians. You know, like people that read the Bible or read any specific form of religious text, but only choose the parts of the Bible or text that they feel that they want to use in their life. Anything else that they don't like, they just ignore. You know. Um, but yeah, like we're probably gonna have a nice, interesting debate. But at least on a fundamental level, we seem to respect each other's stands on each of our sides, which is good. It's a good start for any argument that you disagree with someone on. But now we're gonna go to the part that we disagree on. You want me to start off, Remy, or you wanna go?
Whichever you want.
Okay, I mean, if you wanna go, feel free.
All right, I'll go. So yeah, so for me, I was actually initially pro-choice, but it's a funny story. It's actually an argument I had with someone on Twitter that convinced me to change my position on the topic. I realized that based on my own principles, I was being kind of hypocritical, because I was already vegan at that point, and
Mm.
I was just having this debate with someone about uh, abortion, and they posed a very interesting question, which was basically, if someone is in a coma, they're not conscious, they're not thinking, they're not feeling, but they can potentially come out of the coma. Is that life valuable? So of course I believe, yeah, if they can come out, if they might come out of the coma in the future and essentially become conscious again, then their life is valuable. So I applied that same logic uh to embryo fetus, which is obviously not yet conscious until, I mean, the general consensus is around 20 weeks, I think. But since it obviously has the potential to become conscious, I do consider that particular life to be valuable.
Okay, I think that's a really good start. So to that argument, I was actually thinking about it. Um, like I do a lot, you know, like one of the reasons why I try to get the other side's thoughts and opinions is to make sure that I believe in mine. And even though I can understand some of the other side's thoughts and opinions, if I still believe in mine after that, then that really means that I support it, and then I have means of having like arguments and debates with like friendly arguments and debates with people on the other side, which I think is also cool. But okay, to start off with that, so yes, so someone in a coma could potentially get out of the coma and be conscious again, and feel again and live again. They're still alive. I think as of right now in my head I have two things for that. One, that person in a coma has already been born. So even though you can say that there's some similarities between the two, a really big difference is that one is born and one is not born yet. So you were saying that the fetus could potentially be born, and that's absolutely true. But my second point is, and this may get a bit um, how can I say, a bit personal. So if you are not about being really specific and personal and well, let's just say it might get a bit uncomfortable for some people, but let's say when men ejaculate, right. So that is uh potentially, and people make jokes and memes about it, but scientifically speaking, that is when you just ejaculate without having sex with anyone, like a female, well, never mind. So when you when you ejaculate when you're not having sex with a fertile female, you're technically speaking, in a way, in a really specific way, you're wasting potential human lives, right? And when you, let's say, when a guy just ejaculates somewhere, they are just throwing just a potential for life every time they do it. And yeah, it's usually only one or two, or even sometimes, like in super rare cases, five are gonna be chosen. But that's five out of what, I think, like millions of like
I don't
sperm
know. I
things
don't know
listed
the
there.
specifics.
I knew, I kind of forgot. I think it's thousands or millions. I kind of forgot, or even hundreds. I don't know, but it's definitely a lot. And I think that if someone's gonna go really hard on, like, oh, the fetus could have been potentially alive, so you're just stopping someone from potentially being born, wouldn't you be able, at least in a way, to apply that same aspect to men ejaculating? Because, like, any of one of those hundreds or thousands or millions of sperm could have become fertile and potentially uh, be conscious. Let's say, because you're using or you're the person that you're arguing was using the coma example. Let's say it takes someone 3 years to get back from a coma, right? It takes a woman, what, like couple
40,
weeks, like a couple weeks to get pregnant, and then like 9 months is pregnancy time. Does that sound right?
technically 40 weeks is the typical.
Like pregnancy term?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So it takes her 40 weeks to get pregnant, which is I think that's 52 weeks in a year. So yeah, let's say about 9 months. I think.
That's close enough.
Yeah, close enough. Okay, I'll take it. So it takes her less than a year overall for the whole process to go from start to finish. And man, I just completely blanked out. What was I saying? Yeah, so it takes someone 2 years to come back from this coma, and it takes a woman less than a year to like to get pregnant. So, like, how would it? Damn, I just completely lost it around me.
No, I get what you're saying though.
I,
So
I lost my train of thought, but like, did you at least get like where I
yeah,
was going with that? Okay.
I get what you're saying though, and I have actually heard essentially the same arguments before when I've had this debate with others.
Okay.
Let me cover your first point too, which was drawing the line at birth. I think it's somewhat of an arbitrary line to draw because what separates a fetus a week and a half before birth versus an infant a week and a half after birth. Obviously, it's not dependence. They're both dependent on the mother. The fetus a week and a half before birth would technically be uh, viable, and they're both going to be technically conscious at that point. So I personally think that drawing the line at birth is somewhat arbitrary.
Mm.
But I think your other argument definitely holds a bit more water, and I'll get into my counter for that.
Okay.
So
I'm ready.
obviously, I see where you're going. If the idea is, any potential human life, or maximizing human life, or any life for that matter, is the goal, then why not have as many children as possible, one per year. So obviously that would create a world where we don't have enough resources to give everyone a good life, and everyone's going to have less less of a good life in general. So of course we'll start there at the very extreme and say that's obviously not a desirable scenario. But of course, I think the point Gregory was making is, where do you draw the line? So what the example you gave was, a man ejaculating,
Yeah.
and that's technically you're wasting that human life,
You're
essentially
wasting a lot of.
killing it, or preventing potential human life.
Right.
You could say the same thing. You stay a virgin for life, like I fully intend to. That's also, you're technically would be wasting that human life. I guess we have to draw the line somewhere. I'm sure we can both agree on that. Where I
Yeah. Okay.
personally draw the line is
That's true.
sort of at action versus inaction. So if you already have a pregnant woman, you have a developing embryo or fetus,
Mm.
to have an abortion, to take that life, is you're acting upon it. Whereas in my case, remaining a virgin for life, you could say that's wasting of that potential human life, but
Right.
it's inaction rather than action. So of course it is nuanced, and there's not necessarily one right place to draw the line, but that's where I personally draw the line there.
Yeah, I think that you kind of got it there. I think it's all about, like, I think everyone has their own line that they draw, and I
Mhm.
think that what I think and hope that people are trying to do is find like a middle ground to see where they draw the line. I would, like I said, like I would support like something that, like, after like I think like 6-9 weeks or whatever, like you cannot have like an abortion anymore. Like I would be down to support a bill that after a certain time, where with that time the woman is conscious that she is pregnant, it's obvious that she is pregnant, and that she has like 1 week or two to decide whether or not to do it. I'd be down for that. But then after that specific period of time, she cannot have it anymore. I would potentially support that bill if we're talking about compromising. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and the funny thing is, despite what our politicians and our media might imply, I do think a position like that is one that a majority of Americans hold, restricting abortions like after the first or second term, but allowing them in the first term. So of course, it it really comes down to a difference in fundamental values here. So I think what essentially, Gregory, you're giving more weight to the potential suffering of the woman, and potentially the family, for having to go through with an unwanted pregnancy and having
Right.
to give birth there. Whereas I would personally give more weight to the fact that, okay, we already have a developing being here, and to take that life is not just to create a little bit of hardship for a family, but you're essentially robbing that particular being of
Mm.
all the potential joys of life it may yet have to experience.
Yeah, so I guess we just have like literal like opposite like sides, where like I'm more siding with like the potential harm that, like, or well, I'm just gonna say this first and then elaborate. So I'm just going more on like the mothers or the potential suffering for the people who are having the kids, while you're more focused on like the life, the kid itself, like the life that
Hmm.
could be lost.
And I know I've used these terms before, and when we had previously as either when we previously discussed this or when we were discussing another issue, but positive versus negative utilitarianism, which seem to be kind of our where our fundamental differences are. So, in positive utilitarianism is an ethical view of the world, which I subscribe to, which essentially gives the most weight to the potential for any being to flourish. Whereas Gregory, my understanding of from the conversations we've had on this and on other issues is that you're more of a negative utilitarian. You give the most weight to, rather than maximizing flourishing, you give the most weight to restricting suffering. Yeah.
Oh, correct. I That is 100% or not 100%, but that's definitely mostly true when it comes to me. So um, just building off of that, what you said, and kind of more of what I said earlier, like the suffering aspect. Like for example, if someone let's say a mother, she already has a kid and she's working two jobs to support that kid. Let's say she gets pregnant and she wants to have an abortion, but let's say that this bill that's going on in Florida, I think that they're trying to just ban abortion in general in Florida. I could be wrong, but I think I read that in a article somewhere, and I'm pretty sure it's a really trustworthy article, but I could be wrong. Um, or let's say that she just cannot get an abortion because let's say wherever she is, it's banned. Now, I would say that your side makes a lot of sense when you think about like if a wealthy family uh or someone in a really wealthy family or someone that was really wealthy got a kid, she had like at the time to raise it, she had the money to raise it, and even if she didn't really want to raise it, she could just pay someone to do it, which some people do it, or some people do that. Then I could definitely see more of your point. That's more like she could potentially raise a child, but uh, it could still have some negative impacts. But let's just go to the a bit of the other extreme a little bit and go to the mother with the one kid already and working two jobs to support that kid. Accidentally gets pregnant without wanting, and now she cannot get an abortion. Now, uh, let's say that she has a child, right? And let's say that obviously now she has to work even harder and be even more stressed to support two children at once. And where many cases in these types of situations, the so-called potential for the life to flourish isn't that as much as it is potentially you have a child who has a really bad childhood from their mother not being really present because she has to work so much, from all the stress that their mother's going through and possibly potentially taking out on them, not having like a father around or anything like that. So in a situation where the life would not even have that much of a great chance at as you say, flourishing, and it would just be causing, like, by it being born, it would potentially be causing not other people harm but harm for itself, because like it's kind of like what I say, but not nearly as bad as my situation, of course. Oh, sorry, my situation is nowhere near as bad as that. It's like I don't like children that much. Like I would have no patience for like kids screaming or crying or anything like that. um and yeah, it's just not something that I ever wanted. I think I would be miserable if I did, because like when you really don't want something and you have it, it could sound mean for some people, but I don't really care. That's just the truth. I'd be miserable, and obviously I don't want to be miserable in my life because I want to respect the life that I was given with all the privileges that I've been given as well. But I also don't want to give someone else a miserable father, because that can be really bad for their life in general, and it could really put a big block on their flourishing. And that's one of the main reasons why I would support abortion, is because some people, if they have a kid, they would potentially not only be causing themselves harm, but causing that life that they're going to be forced to have now harm as well. Because, as I was saying, like, some people cannot really afford to give everyone, like, their family, a good life, and especially in a situation like that.
So I hear what you're saying, but again, I think it comes down to our fundamental difference, positive versus negative utilitarianism. So in that extreme scenario, I'd say there's still other options. I mean, yeah, maybe the mother could raise the child herself. She could put the child up for adoption. Maybe worst case, the child ends up in foster care. And you could say none of those are really great scenarios, and obviously none of them are great scenarios. But I'd argue that all of them are better than, taking the life, because you're still giving that child a chance at life, even if they have a tough childhood. You're still giving them the chance at life, and even a harsh life has its positive moments that if you take that life before it's ever given that opportunity, you're taking away those positive moments.
Hmm. Okay, but now you said something about forced foster care and putting them up for adoption. I've known people that were raised in foster care and places like that, and they are really they're like back then, I believe it was in high school. They were like really big Republicans and all that. But the one thing that they did not agree on with them, and more agree with the Democrats, was that they were pro-choice, because they know what it's like to be raised in foster care. And I see your point. Like, you are technically potentially also taking away the potential positive moments for that life to experience. But then you also have the fact that this world that we're living in, like, the planet's already reaching its limits when it comes to, like, population numbers. So if people, let's say people just had, as many do, like, unprotected sex and had kids and were forced to have those kids, the population would potentially just shoot up, and then we would once again uh, be creating a world where an increasingly number of people have worse and worse lives. And yeah, I just think that, like, um the potential for suffering when it comes to, like, the majority of times that a pregnancy happens where they cannot get an access to an abortion, I think that would be higher than the potential for that life to thrive, considering the options. Because let's say that everyone, like I was saying earlier, everyone was forced to have abortions, and they were like, you know what, or sorry, they were forced to not have or to have the other child, and everyone was just like, oh, we can just do this as many times as we want, because we can just put them for foster care or put them up for adoption. So now you have an increasingly overwhelming number of kids going to those already overwhelmingly filled homes. And um, and once again, like, not being raised by parents in a situation like that, I think for the majority of the time it tends to create desperation, and not like like, when you grow up, when your childhood is not filled with at least some kind of happiness or, like, discipline, you tend to grow up undisciplined and unhappy. And I like to believe that many people, well, not like to believe, but I believe that many of those people grow up to not be, like, sympathetic at all, so they potentially grow up to be, like, really bad people, um potentially. So that would be, like, one of my other big arguments for that.
I hear your argument. I'd have to see evidence of your theory to believe it.
Which ones?
The one you just mentioned, that if someone has a tough childhood, they go through foster care, for instance, I'd have to see evidence that children who go through foster care are more likely to be, I don't know, psychopaths or what have you, uh, basically bad people. Also, I'm gonna I'm gonna derail the conversation here
Okay,
because
that's fine.
something else you mentioned, that our world is already reaching its population limits, is what you said, and don't I don't really agree. The world is potentially reaching its population limits if we continue with our current lifestyles, but there are certain relatively easy changes can make, and we already touched on this a bit. But for instance, not eating meat, we
Right.
we can potentially support like twice as many people on this planet if we stopped eating stop
So
consuming
much
beef
meat.
and dairy alone.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, and sorry to interrupt your train of thought, but um, I just wanted to add to, like, yeah, we we could, like, if we did that, it would be definitely a huge increase in the gap of people that we can hold, and it is an easy choice. It's also an easy choice to stop. Like, in terms of like ethical, it should be easy to stop people from, or big companies from polluting so much, from overfishing, from stopping illegal sales of animals, of endangered species, to stop, or to just have everyone use solar to do this and to do that. Those should be easy, and those could, I would well agree that those could increase our population gap by a lot. But how things are going right now, the likability of our government, or most governments, actually doing that, I think that is an incredibly hard, or tough, or I would like to say really, I think it would be like a really, like a near, like a miracle for that to happen. So I'll say, like, in this current path that we're going right now, I don't think I see like everyone changing, because there are people out there who will, like, I worked in retail, and I heard this father talking to his kid. It's like, oh, you should eat meat and not eat, just plants, because you have to grow like big and strong, and I think he says something like, oh, if you want to have like muscles, and grow big and strong, and not just weak and pathetic, something like that, you have to eat meat. And the kid was actually, well, no, I don't know what that was, but um, you have to be, you have to eat meat, and the kid was actually like, well, I guess I just won't eat meat then, which I think was actually pretty funny. But there are people out there.
Respect.
There are people out there who think that, and there are politicians out there, and news hosts and casts, who will feed their viewers that, if it means getting their views, and getting paid. Like, there's a news channel called Fox News, that they're being,
I don't think anyone's heard of it. I think you
what?
should. Fox News. I don't think anyone's heard of that. I think you should elaborate.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah. So Fox News is a news channel, and if you have not heard of it, then you've probably been living in a cave or you probably have been raising a kid for your for 50 years or so. Uh, but but yeah, so they were being sued by the Minion voting machine company, because they were spreading potential lies about frauds and stuff. So they were being sued. I think they're still being sued, and they're forced to hand over emails and certain texts between the hosts, showing that many of the things that they talked about, like, on their news channel, saying that they support it, in real life they apparently do not support at all. If anything, they actually hate it. um like, many of them were caught, like, texting, saying that, like, that they actually didn't believe that the election was stolen, or anything like that, or that was just ridiculous. And one of them was actually caught texting a couple of emails too, was that they were saying that if they didn't lie like they did, they wouldn't get the viewership that they do, and that if they stopped, they would end up like some other forgotten news channel, you know. So there's that too. And I think with that, and people still supporting them, supporting those ideas, I don't think that world would come to be. um but would you at least, instead of completely banning people their freedom and choice for their own body completely, would you, like, if it was me on one side and you on the other, would you be willing to compromise on like a certain amount of weeks, like where the woman will know obviously that she is pregnant, so she can make a choice on whether to do it or not, but after this specific time she won't be able to do it? Would you be able to compromise on that?
Oh, of course. I think reducing reducing the number of abortions slightly is better than not reducing them at all.
That's fair. That's fair. And now, would you also agree that women should, like, some people are saying, oh, 3 weeks, but some women, apparently, I'm not a woman and I've never been pregnant and hopefully never will. So I don't know, but I think like there's a specific amount of weeks that some people were suggesting where a woman wouldn't know if she's pregnant or not. So wouldn't you agree that women should have like a certain amount of time where they know that they are pregnant, so they then can make the choice? You know.
Well, again, it will just come down to different values. I get what you're saying, and obviously that's not an ideal scenario, but I still would place greater value on the life growing inside the woman, that we'd be, robbing them of all the potential pleasures of life.
Now, okay. Actually, okay. So I have a pretty interesting question. We have a little bit of time left, so I have one last question for you. So you're saying that you value the potential of a life to thrive and be happy and succeed potentially, right?
Yeah.
So what would you say about, what if the woman's potential of succeeding, being happy, would be extreme? Would be, let's say, there's a really high extreme chance that the woman's life would deteriorate. Let's say she had a career she worked really hard for. She has like a bachelor's degree or something. She has this thing that she worked hard for years and years and years. Um, or any situation like that, and having this child would um, stop her from enjoying life anymore. And let's say she'd be like me, where like she wouldn't want to raise a child, but like a near impossible thing happened where she did get pregnant, even though she tries her best to be careful. And now her potential of enjoying life and thriving further would be stopped by having this child. At like, let's say she knows by like the third or fourth week. Would you not allow her to have an abortion then?
So I'll first say there is a place I'll draw the line, sort of in that way. It's not in this scenario because the embryo or the fetus still potentially has its entire life ahead of it. Let's say 80 years or what have you. Whereas the mother, let's assume she's, I don't know, 30. She's got 50 years ahead of her. So even theoretical worst scenario, having the child basically ruins the mother's life. She's never able to experience happiness again, which obviously isn't realistic.
I mean,
Even
not
if
ever having this again, but it would be a complete, just like, awful turn
Yeah,
from where
yeah,
they are.
I'm just saying,
Yeah. Mhm.
in the extreme scenario, which
Right.
is obviously unrealistic because it'll it'll take a toll on her life, but obviously she will be able to experience happiness again. But even if it were, the absolute extreme
Worse.
scenario, her life is basically over. She's never able to experience pleasure again. I'd still value that the embryo or fetus's life more because it still has potentially more years of experiencing life's joys ahead of it. And I'll get
Damn.
to I'll get to where I would draw the line though, because the basically what you're trying to ask me is, in a scenario in which having the child reduces the flourishing potential of those who are already born and living their lives,
Right.
the reduction there is greater than the potential for flourishing of the unborn child. so the place I would draw the line is if a child gets pregnant. I would say in that particular scenario, an abortion is definitely warranted, because not only, well, again, say a 13-year-old child gets pregnant, they still have most of their lives ahead of them, which would be to an extent ruined. And not only that, but potentially the lives of their entire family would be significantly impacted. So in that particular scenario, I think that the reduction of flourishing potential for those already born and living their lives is probably greater than it would be to take the life of the child.
But didn't you say that since a child, like a fetus, has more living potential than someone who's already born, that the fetus should be valued more? Like that is a like whoever is like, I don't know, but like I, just thinking of like a pregnant 13-year-old dude. That's just like
Oh, it's messed.
disgusting.
Yeah,
Like
that's messed
it's
up. But
fucked up. I mean, it happens because like we live in a somewhat fucked up world. But back to your point, didn't you say that we should value the fetus more because it has the longer
yeah,
potential
so
for them?
I'm saying in this particular scenario, it's because not only is it significantly negatively going to impact the life of the 13-year-old, but also
Mm.
potentially this 13-year-old child's entire family will be significantly negatively impacted if she does go through with it. So in this particular scenario, I think that the reduction in flourishing potential for the 13-year-old child and their parents and any siblings they have probably outweighs the reduction in flourishing potential for the unborn child by just taking its life.
What if it's the same situation but for a 20-year-old? Like same exact situation, but she's 20 years old.
I think in that scenario, it'll probably have less of an effect on the family. I think it's going to be a lot more.
But what if it has about the same effect on the family?
I mean, here we go with another thing that's not really quantifiable. So you have to draw the line somewhere, and it's not going to be perfect.
Fair.
I mean, if you could theoretically somehow prove that the reduction in flourishing potential for the family will be greater than the reduction in flourishing potential for the unborn child by simply taking its life, then yes, I would say in that case, an abortion is warranted. But again, we can't really quantify it, so
Right.
I draw the line at, I guess it's as arbitrary as anything, but under 18.
Okay, so but would you make a thing where you would ban abortions for anything else besides that specific scenario? Like, would you ever consider 6 weeks before completely ban? Because obviously, like, let's say they ban abortions, right? People are probably gonna try to have abortions anyway, like illegally, just to not have a child, which I think many have done, and I can definitely dig up some reports of that and send them to you.
Oh, for sure, it
Um,
happens.
right. So people are gonna try doing that, and obviously people are gonna not like that society because people don't like being restricted completely. Like some people can compromise, like me, in terms of like um, how much a certain power limits you of doing something, like speed limits, right? Like you can go like on a 50, you can go 50, which is pretty fast, but if you go like 85, you're gonna get like a speeding ticket, So, but you accept that because you know how dangerous it is to drive 85. Some people still do it, but there's an understanding that if you drive that fast, not only is it super dangerous, but you could potentially have to pay a fine. Um, so, would you be fine with completely banning abortion from any scenario besides one that you deem worth of having one?
So that's an interesting question. What I will say is I would still consider it to be ethically the wrong choice in most scenarios to have an abortion, even if it's before the second term or however wherever you want to draw the line. However, for our society as a whole, I might be willing to accept that some sort of compromise like that, like 6 weeks or like the first term, might be better for our society as a whole.
Recording was done. It was good. It was set, but it did not seem to have saved on the website that I used to record. So sadly, very sadly, you folks will not be able to hear what transpired after that. But pretty much, we ended it in a pretty good note. Um, Rem was quite vocal and honest throughout the whole video. It was honestly a really fun time. Yeah, it was a fun time, and I think we both did really well in getting our points across. And in the end, even as strong as he is on his stance, we did come to an agreement that for the topic of conversation, excuse me, for the talk for the topic of conversation, and just to kind of agree, kind of how you say, compromise a little bit. We did agree that sometimes you in order to be able to not necessarily please both sides, but in order to make some things work, you have to come to a compromise. And we ended up agreeing on in terms of abortion having or giving people 6 weeks or so to be able to get an abortion, which he did tell me on the recording that it is not something that he necessarily would want, but he does seem to understand um, the overall concept of a society and how that may not really work. Like stopping everyone from doing something may not work in terms of like ruling or helping a society be healthy and stable. So, and overall, it was not really, or it would not really be what both either side would want, like on like a complete honest scale. But for a compromise, we did agree on that. Um, so yeah, it was a really healthy debate, a really healthy ending. This podcast is I want this podcast to be about that. You folks may not like it, you folks may not understand, you folks may even hate some of the things that we may say here, but yeah, just remember that everyone has their own opinions on things, and like I said, sometimes you have to come to a compromise when it comes to any kind of relationship, life, jobs, career, school, many things, or even life in general. Sometimes it's not about always compromising. Sometimes you may not want to, or you don't think it's worth it, and that's fine. It's about drawing a line on that and making sure that all parties, including yourself, understand where that line is. You know, um, so the summary is compromises are very important to maintain stability, but should not be something that you should always look for. Sometimes some things are not worth a compromise, or the compromise is not good. Like in a toxic relationship, for example, there's so much that you can compromise until you are compromising yourself, and not like small things like you know what you wear, places that you both go to eat, um, shows that you watch, movies that you watch. That's basic and fine. Depending on who you are. But if you are someone, sorry, but if you're talking about something like changing who you are to a scale that it would be detrimental, then obviously that's a bit of a completely different level. So yeah, it was like I said, it was really fun. I hope to have more people, like a big variety of people on the podcast in the future. I have some things in the works. Hopefully, I will try my best to make them work out. But thank you very much for listening. I appreciate y'all's understanding, your patience, and everything. It really means a lot as I work through the ropes with this with this podcast of mine. And I hope you all are able to, even if you don't like some of us or our opinions, please don't forget that everyone has their own opinion, and you may not like it. Some opinions can be a bit extreme, but some people may honestly believe in them. And it's about being able to have a debate and trying to be honest with each other. And if it's not someone that you can debate with or normally talk to without losing your mind or your patience, because I definitely have some people like that that I've known in the past, then it's fine. But if you were, associating with this person in any way, it kind of doesn't make sense, So I strongly recommend, if you have anyone like that, for example, me and Remy, we disagree on pro-life, pro-choice, but we're still able to debate about it and come to a agreement, like a healthy conversation. If you have a tough time doing that with someone and it's about something big that you really believe in, it's completely up to you if you want to be associated with them or not. But in the end, if you have a choice and you make a choice, that is on you. If you don't want to be around that person, just let them know. It may hurt, may be uncomfortable, absolutely, but it's worth it for your sanity and for your mental and physical health. It's always good to have good people around you. And if sadly you don't have anyone, then it's better to be alone, honestly. It's better to starve a little bit than to eat rat poison. So once again, thank you everyone for listening. I apologize for this slight inconvenience. I hope you all did enjoy the thankfully the piece of the episode that I was able to save, which was the initial big chunk of it. This week we will be planning on a bit of a preview that we've been actually talking about. We talked about outside of the podcast that we want to just have an episode to focus on it alone. It's going to be gun safety, the Second Amendment, who should have it, where should we have it, what gun should we ban, things like that. So I hope you all get excited for that as much as I am. And hopefully, let's always strive to try our best to have honest and good and healthy conversations. Even in disagreements, we can still be friends. Of course, that's not for everyone. Everyone has their own specific thing, but it's a balance, like many, if not all things in life. So thank you very much for listening to the 10th episode of the Off the Rails podcast. I'm really happy to have made it this far, and I hope to make many more. Here's to 10 more. And once again, thank you very much for listening. I hope you all have a great day, and stick around and wait for the next episode next week to drop, episode 11 of the podcast. See you then. Great day to you all. Take care.